Right, we are broadcasting. Yes, indeed. Okay, I always log in a couple of minutes early, so I don't know if you're there. So log in and say hello, and the way that you do that is just below the video. If you're on the live feed, you will find a place to put your name and email address and a place for comments. So go ahead and do that now. How have you been this week? I hope you've had an amazing week. Well, I've had the pleasure. I'm just chatting while we're waiting for everybody to come online and for the official time to start. Now, one of the things I think most of you know, and if you don't, I've got a son. He's 16 now. He has some challenges in life. He has a form of spina bifida, hydroclephasil, and epilepsy. But as he's in his last year of school, they're doing the Edinburgh Award, and part of his bronze award is that he gets to go camping with his classmates. And because of the epilepsy, they asked if I would come and sleep there tonight. So Monday night, we've had this glorious weather all last week. Monday night, I arrived at 7:30. They promised that I could eat with them. They'd already eaten, so I went hungry that night. And the rain was coming down, so we were in small tents under a bigger tent, a marquee type thing. But the rain, we got everybody settled, and they were a lovely bunch of friends in his class. They are just absolutely wild and just gorgeous. So we got everybody into bed eventually, into their tents, and the rain's coming down, and it's coming down so much that every time the wind blows, there is an avalanche of water, and each of the tents started to have big, big, big puddles started to form around them, and the wind picked up, and the whole thing was shaking. There was only one thing to do because if we stayed there all night, we were going to wake up floating gently down a river. So we had to move everybody to their dorms. But it was a wonderful time, and they got a chance to set up the tents and everything. Right. So remember, say hello, just so that I know that you're there. So, and how you do that is just below here on the live recordings. You'll find a place to put your name, email address, and type in hello and what you've been up to this week. I do realize there is a short delay. Hiya, Jim. Good to see you. Just checking in and changing events. Fabulous. Thank you, Jim. Good to chat to you this week as well. I think you're going to do some amazing things. I know because you do already. Excellent. Right. In about 20 seconds, we'll get going officially. All right. Doo-doo. All right. I am going to attempt the PowerPoint stuff again this week. Hi, Steve. Lovely to. We haven't caught up yet, have we? But lovely to see you online. Thank you ever so much for saying hi. I'm always aware there's several people online, but they never want to interact, and I get that. I fully get that. I understand, but it's always nice to have the interaction. Fabulous. Let's get going. So, to be sure, when you step with great care and great tact, and always remember life's a big balancing act. And don't forget to be dexterous and daft, and never mix up your right foot with your left. And you will succeed. Yes, you will indeed. 98.75% guaranteed. Dr. Zeus. And it's true. We've been exploring influencing. And as long as you're flexible and you're allowed to be a little bit daft and dexterous, but step with great care and great tact, you'll guarantee succeed in what it is and how you're helping somebody. So, for the last few weeks, we've been exploring some of the principles that underpin influencing and how powerful those can be. We talked a little bit on the first session about how words trigger images in people's minds. And we used the example, and it's a very common example, of don't think of a blue elephant up a pink tree. What you doing? Then we talked about gaps, and we talked about a rabbit, a car, and a road. And notice now that I've said that, the two stories are now competing. We've still got the stronger story, but you've now heard that phrase several times, and the other story is getting a bit of momentum. And that is one of the ways we talked about how you can install beliefs. And we touched a little bit about mirror neurons. And so we've had several of these sessions and we're starting to build up some momentum here. And so influencing for good. So what do we mean by that? Because underlying all of this, and it's one of the things that you'll be taught if you ever do any hypnosis training, that you can't get somebody to do something against their morals and their values. Right, which kind of brings up the question of the stage hypnosis stuff. I realize that. But you have to remember that's quite a unique situation. And the trance starts long before they arrive at the venue. And the trance starts when? That's right. It starts as soon as they see the poster. Their mind starts to form thoughts and ideas of what's possible. When they buy the ticket, they're reinforcing that trance. And when they walk into the theater, that is a deep induction. And if you've ever been to a hypnosis show, there's people do amazing and wacky and strange things. And who would they not normally do anywhere else? Well, it's a strange permission. Even people who are highly introverted got a chance just to let loose and let go. And they won't kill somebody unless it's within their moral system. They won't steal unless it's within their moral system. And so you can't get someone to do anything against their will. Stage shows is a unique situation. It is socially acceptable in that circumstance, in that theater, to do some things that's probably a little bit out of character. But that's what we're not really talking about. We're talking about how can we influence somebody for good. Now, ideally, this needs to be a win-win situation, which we spent some time talking about the ethics of that. And if you haven't seen the very first session in these 4 webinars on influencing, go back and review that. Okay, so how do we do it for good? The thing is, there's a couple of ways you can influence people. One is through new information. People make the same decision they've always made based on the information they have. Hence, one of the presuppositions of NLP. People always make the best choices with the information they have at any point. So there's times in your lives where thinking back, you would do something different. And that's because you have new information. But being put back into that situation with the same information and your same knowledge base, you'll do the same things. So people don't change their minds unless they have new information. But then the question comes, how do we help somebody's mind open up to hear new information? And there's a very powerful process for doing that. And it's to align yourself with the person. And I'm talking a deeper level than just rapport. So if we understand somebody's values and their beliefs around a certain situation, because this will all be contextual, then we can use those values and beliefs to help us design interventions, influencing tools, because we're going to use their values to help them come to their own conclusions, although we little nudges here and there. Excellent. And so why would we do that? And there's multiple different areas that we could do that in. So one of those is if you are a manager and you have a team of people, I think you are duty bound to do your best to get the most from the people. And that means multiple things. That means caring for them, making sure that they are looked after, as well as motivated to work. And one of the ways that you do that is you engage with people. And one of the ways you can do that is to nudge them in certain directions. And yes, it's ethical in my worldview to be able to nudge people in certain directions using their own values and belief systems. But before we can help them, we'd have to know what their values and beliefs are. Not what the company's values are, although those are important, what the individual values and beliefs are. And you'd be able to utilize those as leverage. So what if you're a therapist and you've got somebody who's stuck in their life? They're failing, they're down on life, whatever it is. And you if you start from where they are, you understand their map of the world, you can lead them to a new map of the world. So one of the ways that help us understand people is for their values and beliefs. All right, so let's have a talk around values and beliefs. And values are motivators. So if we understand somebody's motivation in a particular area of their life, then we start to understand how to influence them in a way that's very natural to them. Also, their beliefs. So we're going to have a look at values and beliefs as a precursor to being able to design influencing interventions. So how do you know what language to use? What language patterns? We have a whole batch of language patterns in NLP. But there's strange things happen. You've had a whole batch of people take a lot of NLP training, and then they go and speak at people patterns. So they'll start off going, I know you're wondering, and it's good to wonder, is it not? And people go, what are you talking about? Wondering. And then eventually start to do this. They start to step away from you and they want to move away from you, and then they turn and they're off. So how do you know what pattern to use? So what do the NLP language patterns do for us? They are a set of riffs, if you like. So if I was a guitarist, one of the ways that I become proficient and be able to improvise and make spontaneous music up is you'll learn little patterns on the guitar. I was a guitarist, so you'll learn little patterns on the guitar and you'll practice those, and then you'll build on those and they'll grow until you own them. And then you start to express your own music. And that's what I think the NLP language patterns do in NLP. But if you only get to the point where you're just mimicking a pattern and you don't really have an in-depth understanding of it and the effect that it has, when you go and play in a band, yeah, you could be technically good, but people might go, eh. An example for me of that is I love the blues and various, and I started off in rock and roll, but one of the guitarists I love is BB King. BB King, I think, is an amazing guitarist. And he'll walk out, and I went to see him live. Can you imagine that? I got to see BB King live. I was so excited. Well, he was late. He was 3 hours late, and you can imagine the audience were getting restless. But he was such a professional. He walked straight out, and he owned us all, and he had us in the palm of his hand. And he came out and won us over with one note. He went, ba-da! Just played that one note, and it was like hairs on the back of your neck stood up. Because it wasn't the note, it was the soul that went behind it. And I have seen other people come out, technically play the same note in the same vibrato and everything, and you go, yeah, so it's a note. And that's where we want to go, is beyond just the language patterns. So your language has heart and has a rhythm that connects with people. And the way to get there, so you know what to play, what language pattern to use, is to understand the individual or individuals that you're influencing. And like I said, one of the ways that we can do that is through values and beliefs. So let's have a look at the relationship of those. Okay, so values. Values are the things that motivate you. The reason you do what you do is because of your values. So watch where people invest their time and energy. Because a lot of us will say, I value this, I value that, and then not invest any time and energy into it. Now, yes, you can do something against your values, but your stress levels will build up. If you're doing something against your values, your stress level starts to build because it's not something you're naturally motivated to do. And that's why sometimes you get somebody move into a certain job. For example, a common one is sales, and a particular company has a certain sales technique which is against the individual's values. Their stress levels build, and one or two things will happen. Either they'll just can't take it anymore and leave that post, or their values get updated to a different value. And that's the only way that they're the two most common things that happen in that situation. So values things that motivate us. You track people's true values by watching their behavior. Where do they invest their time and energy into? Beliefs are the rules we have in place so that we know our values have been fulfilled. Beliefs are the rules we have in place so we know our values have been fulfilled. So they tend to be rule based. Okay, so let's have a look how they interact together. I'm going to attempt to do the PowerPoint thing. Let's see what happens, shall we? And it's not going to be long, so if it doesn't work and you see my shiny little face there on the screen, let me know when the slides go. But for whatever reason, I can no longer, once I put the slides up, they overtake all my screens. I've got several screens set up here. So just let's see if it works this time. Okay, so now I think you should be seeing, whoops, you should be seeing the influence creates good, and there's my little shiny head there. Now, hopefully, when I press the play button here, you'll still hear me, but you should still see the influence that creates good. Okay, not going to be too long on this, but as far as I can tell, we've got the technology working. All right. So values are the things that motivate you. The beliefs are the rules you have in place to know you've fulfilled your values. And like every time we do this, you have a copy of the handouts, which you'll, if you haven't found them, they are just below the video itself, just over to the, I think it's to the left as you look at it. And if you right click, you can then download those handouts. It's a PDF where you'll see the statement. So values are the things that motivate you. Beliefs are the rules you have in place to know you've fulfilled your values. Right, okay then. So values seem to work in systems. So we see the top value there is what we tend to call in NLP an N value. Values are abstract terms. And what I mean by that, like true values is happiness. Notice how abstract the word happiness is. Now, each of us here would have a value of happiness. It's one of the very few that we would say is a universal values for humans. And it's a motivator. But do you suspect that each of us does happiness in our own unique way? Absolutely. So that's what I mean by abstract terms. So things like purpose, legacy, making a difference, fulfillment are true values. And so what you'll see is if we said that this here, oh, there's a little belief popped up. Beliefs pop up everywhere. But we see the word value here. That would be an end value. And then to support happiness, we might have for one person fun and freedom. That's support. And we call them enabling values. Where somebody else had a top value of happiness, well, the second value just below it could be a value of security. And then below that, we have a value of work. Yes, work is a value. It's not normally the end value, but work is an abstract term. Right. So values tend to work in systems and they support and enable other people. Then around each of those cluster beliefs. And each one of these is a rule we have in place, i.e., that we're calling a belief, so that we know this value has been fulfilled. And this is why, on a personal note, if you've ever worked around a limiting belief, a belief that no longer serves you anymore, and you worked on a limiting belief, you think, right, I've changed that, you get rid of it. And then a couple of days later, a very similar belief pops up in its place, and you think, oh, I thought I dealt with that. Well, you did deal with that. You're just now dealing with the next belief in the cluster of beliefs. And this is why sometimes when you change your beliefs, you don't have the impact you think it's going to, because beliefs are being updated and changed all the time. And the belief, once changed, may or may not affect the value. Well, what happens if you change the value? Well, all the beliefs change. Right. Okay, excellent. So, work as a value. Okay, it's an abstract term. It means different things to different people. Some people are energized by it. Some people see it as a value that they want to move away from. Okay, so around each value, we said there was a cluster of beliefs that we call rules. So here's some examples. And so we noticed that this one, we have be early, do my best, 12 hours, take overtime, don't make trouble, do what's been told of myself. And notice they're rule based. You can see that they're kind of like a kind of almost a cause and effect, but not fully there yet. So, for example, is let's take the 12 hours. How do you know you've worked for 12 hours? Well, how do you know you fulfilled the value of work? Well, I've worked for 12 hours. Nothing to do with quality, nothing to do with quantity. As long as I'm there for 12 hours, I know I've fulfilled the value of work. Somebody else might have a value of time still, no, sorry, a belief of time, and they may say 3 hours. As long as I work for 3 hours, I know that value of work has been fulfilled. Again, nothing to do with quality or quantity, it's time based. Who's right? Well, it doesn't matter. They're both right. It's how they interpret the instructions, the beliefs. Okay, so the one that we're interested in are the values. So how do we start to elicit the values so that we can start to understand the person if we're going to start to influence them on, as we talked before, from a management point of view, from a therapist point of view, talking to your teenager. Well, you might have some challenges with your teenagers. First step is try to get them talking. So I'm joking. My teenagers have been great. I've been very lucky. Okay, so how do we start to elicit the values? Well, that's very simple. You've got a couple of questions, which are, so what's important to you about fill in the blank? What do you value about? What else? Now, it's amazing what information people will give you when you ask questions. If you want to control the conversation, control the questions. And when you're genuinely interested and listening and paying attention, the very simple questions make a huge difference. People will open up to you. Hence the old phrase, if you want to be interested, be interested. And the way that you do that is ask questions. Okay, so that's how we get the values that we can then leverage in a certain situation. The next is the beliefs, and we've got a whole batch of beliefs here. Okay, for our purposes, and for you guys that have done the master practitioner, you'll recognize these from sleight of mouth patterns. And where, if you haven't come across sleight of mouth patterns, this is the foundational understanding of how never to lose an argument. Yeah, interesting stuff. But a topic for another day, I think. But also, what happens is people will lay out their beliefs in front of you if you ask because or which means. Okay, so let's put this into example. Let's say I say, she doesn't love me. And rather doing what we always do is go, oh, never mind, plenty more fish in the sea. And I'm thinking, I don't want to date fish. Well, rather than just saying that, she doesn't love me, we've only got half of the belief. We haven't connected what's going on. But if you say, because she doesn't bring me flowers anymore, whoa, how does the bring the flower stuff mean she doesn't love you? Isn't the fact that she holds your hands and whispers sweet nothings and no, it's the flower thing. Okay, but we've just got the structure of the cause and effect. So let me ask you a question. She doesn't love me. Is that an internal representation, internal world, or external representation or external world? Yeah, she doesn't love me anymore is all to do internally. It's an internal representation of what's going on. The bring me flower stuff is to do with what's happening outside of the person, external world. So what we've discovered here is that the beliefs connect cause and effect beliefs connect our internal world with the external world. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you think if you know what drives somebody's behavior, i.e., values, and you understand how they connect in their internal world with their external world, that would be a very powerful bit of information that you could utilize to influence somebody? All right, I'm back. Okay, let's see if that worked. Jim say no, as soon as you hit plays, it goes. Ah, I want to know about the values elicitation and the Claire Graves model. Ah, that's a big topic. Values elicitation, Claire Graves model. Okay, cool. Ashwin, hiya, how you doing? Thank you for joining us. Right, so the PowerPoints didn't work. You had to look at my smiley face. I'm now animated. Right, we'll keep playing with that. We'll get it working one day. All right, so now the values elicitation. The values elicitation is where you ask questions. And again, confirmation, Stephen saying, Sally, the PowerPoints didn't work. Oh, and they're such beautiful PowerPoints. Hopefully you downloaded and you followed them along. And maybe that's what we need to do until we find out what is going on with the PowerPoints. So values elicitation. So one of the ways that we want to do it from our influencing point of view is to go, let be interested in the person and ask the question, so what's important to you about? What else is important to you? And when you ask, or the other question we had was, what do you value about? And fill in the blank. So what's important to you about NLP training? You might say, well, ethical, high standards, engaging, transformational. What else is important to you about NLP training? And you probably wouldn't do like that. You might go, what else? Oh, that it's practical. It makes a difference. And notice you start if you listen, you're hearing the values, and it's about being that interest. So from our point of view, from the influencing point of view, because we probably won't do it formally. When you do a formal elicitation, you set it up in a very different way. But for our purposes, now, Ashwin, you talked about the Claire Graves model, which is spiral dynamics. That is a big, big topic. And I'm sure we've got some resources somewhere. If you haven't come across spiral dynamics, based on the work of Dr. Claire Graves basically teaching philosophy. And one of his students had the audacity to ask him, oh, he took Nietzsche, Plato, Socrates, who's correct? And he went, I don't know. I really don't know. And nearly gave up teaching. But instead of doing that, he started a research project. And he's looking in what motivate people, what are value systems. And he talked about this whole range of value systems. And Ashwin, if you email me and remind me, maybe we'll do a session on those. How's that? That would be useful. But that topic will probably span over several sessions. So slightly more than we needed here. Excellent. So to summarize where we got to, we talked about values being motivators, abstract terms, and a way that we can elicitate those would be conversationally. And with two questions. And the beliefs part, we talked about them to do with connecting our internal world to the external world. And when somebody says, I struggle at learning because I don't know how to, because I've never been taught. Yep, and sometimes you'll find that chain. Okay, then, so I struggle at learning, internal or external? Internal. I've never been taught how, internal or external? External. Fabulous. Now What we just covered here, understandings from the values and beliefs, enables people to lay out in front of you what motivates them and how they structure their world. I bet you're wondering, and it's good to wonder, is it not? That, don't back away from me, stay with me, that is valuable information that not only can you use to help somebody, motivate them, is that you could utilize that for belief structures. And once you know their values and belief structures, and I come back to that statement, what I meant by use create belief structures, it would make sense what language patterns to use, which is all to do with next week's session, where we're going to take particular language patterns. We're going to learn those as riffs, and then I'll talk about how do we start to master that. How do we put all this theory that we've been doing this over the last sessions that we've been involved here and put language to it? And I wish there's a big build up, I know, but the language patterns, as fun as they are, without the theory that underpins all of them, can be dangerous and do more harm than good. So I want to make sure you had the theory there before. And as you can imagine, these sessions are just the tip of the iceberg of what we would cover on a full NLP practitioner training. And I think we're all adults enough to know that the reason that we're doing this is that if you do decide to take any training, that you would choose us over anyone else. We know that. All right. So I said, let's have a little technique to help influence somebody, because we've learned some theory. We ought to have a technique. Then we'll take any questions, and then I think we're done for the evening. So the goal is to keep these short and snappy, because I will carry on talking if you let me. Right. Now, one of the ways that we can do, so let's take it from a hypnotic point of view and then put it into an everyday scenario. So, and we said, okay, then, so how do we connect somebody's internal world with their external world? And that's one of the things that we talked about from the belief structure. And it's very easy because we said the words because or which means. Okay, so for example, as you're looking or listening to this webinar, that means your life will start to change in meaningful ways. Will it, John? Yes. Okay, so let's look. So as you look or listen to this webinar, yes, and I say look or listen because some people look at the screen and some people have it on in the background while they're doing that other stuff. I hope you're not on Facebook or doing your mail, but I'm realistic. So that's an external world. That's the external world. Means that your life will change in meaningful ways. Now, if you accepted that as a suggestion, and I highly recommend you do, you have to go internally to make sense of that and what those changes will mean to you as an individual. And notice all I did was connected two separate things, which was plausible, together. And that's what the wonderful thing about cause and effect does. It connects information together, and you can use that to influence. So if I was opening a meeting, okay, we're here in this room for this meeting, which means by the end of it, we'll have all come to a decision to move forward. Okay. First part, external world. We're here at the meeting. Decision is all to do with internal world. So that little language pattern can be very powerful in of itself. And we get it from the mighty Milton Erickson. But from a linguistic point of view, that's been used forever. You know your parents have done that because eat your spinach because you'll grow up strong and healthy. Cause and effect. So we can utilize cause and effect in our language. So for everybody here, what I'm going to invite you to do is if you would like to write out several examples of cause and effects that you would use in a certain situation, and you would like me to check those for you, I'm happy to do that. So write out, because if you write out 10 examples for a situation, which is really good thing to do, because writing them out makes you think about the pattern, the cause and effect of pattern. But you'd like me to check them, I would do that just because you're you. And so email them to me, and my email is johnjohn@nlpcourses.com, and I'm happy to serve you in that way. Ashwin, okay, excellent. So what about some modalities and walk and belief change process? So I think you're looking for a full NLP practitioner, which I do highly recommend. These sessions are meant to be 40 minutes, and we're now 35 minutes into it. But yes, from influencing yourself, some modalities is fabulous for that. And once you've mastered the language of some modalities, you can shift people's thinking that way also. So a great topic. And the walk and belief change process. I love that session, and I first come across it from Robert Dilts, but I need to keep us on topic. So wonderful questions, but very big topics you're talking about. So today we're looking at the theory of the values and beliefs and how we can aim that influencing people for good. So thank you. All right. So any other questions or comments about the values and beliefs, the cause and effect to do with influencing? And I do realize that as you're typing away, what's going to be happening is there's going to be delay between your typing. You need to think about what you want to say, you're typing, and then send and receive. It's only probably about 60 to 70 seconds. But when you're online like this, it can seem like forever. So do go ahead and do that. And we've got while you're doing that, if you are interested in this and you're here, so I do believe you are interested in this, is that we do have an NLP practitioner coming up this summer in the heart of London, just by Hyde Park. Beautiful place to take the training, and it's over weekends. And if you can make it, fabulous. Go to the website, nlpcourses.com, and you'll see several things. One, you'll see the NLP practitioner giving an outline of the courses, but you'll also see a bursary. So we've got a little fund together to help fund some of your training. So Jim, there's got some examples. And I'll read it out, but I'll go through those a little bit later, Jim, and then get back to you on some feedback on those. I want to date fish. Me neither. Slippery characters. Yeah, I think Jim's got a better sense of humor than me. Now that's outrageous. I'm not sure you're allowed to be funnier than I am. Thanks for the because and that means patterns. I knew it worked, but didn't fully understand how or why. Now I can use them more effectively. I have a building, maintaining rapport session coming up, and I'll be using values and beliefs in it. Language patterns will help me. Cheers. Absolutely, Jim. So the values and beliefs are the next level of connecting with people. And can you provide your email, and also can you add me to your LinkedIn? Okay, excellent, Ashwin. Happy to do that. So my email address is johnjohn at nlpcourses.com. And what I'll do is I'll, I'll get that over to you somehow. And if you send a request to me, Ashwin, I'm not sure if you have already. I like to connect with people on LinkedIn that I know. I'm not one of these people who just connects just for the sake of connecting. But you're here as my guest, and I would love to connect back with you. So resend the invite if you haven't, and we'll connect up on LinkedIn. That'll be fabulous. And oh, Ashwin, you came through several times. That's great. Wow, haven't we covered a lot over these last few sessions? So let's bring this to a close as we move into the last 2 minutes of this session. Apart from the technical difficulties with the PowerPoints, not sure what's going on there. I'm suspecting it's something to do with my Mac, because Macs don't like to talk to the rest of the world for some reason. But never mind, we will get there. Right. So we talked about the importance of values. Values are the things that motivate us. The reason you do what you do is because of your values. Shows up in people's behaviors, where they invest their time and energy, not necessarily what they say. Doesn't mean they can't have value clashes. A common value clash is work and family. They'll often clash because there could be a time element to both, but that's a values clash. But in those situations, there'll be a set of values, the value systems that we can utilize to build a deep rapport, but it's a very powerful tool to influence somebody. Next, we moved on to beliefs, and there's various different structures to beliefs. We just covered one structure of beliefs, which is the cause and effect. And we noted that often people only give you half of the belief. And I told you my sad story that she didn't love me anymore. And you all so heartless and said, "Ah, so what, John?" And but some brave soul said, "Because she doesn't bring me flowers anymore." And you're like, "What?" But that's how our beliefs are formed. And remember, beliefs don't have to be logical. They're often quite illogical, but they make sense to the individual person. Then, as a little influencing pattern, we talked about the cause and effect as a way of connecting people's internal world to the external world. And you take a situation and use the word because, or which means, where you connect two things together. Attending this webinar means you'll be compelled to come and take our NLP training. Was that just a little bit too cheeky? You never know. And I did make you an offer, because one of the ways to master language patterns like this is to practice them. So I use this metaphor of guitarists learning little riffs on their guitars. And what we do is you practice the pattern over and over again till you get them. How we do that with language patterns is you think of a situation. So whether it may be some good guinea pigs are your children. The reason we have children is so that we can practice any skills that we learn on them. Your partner, your bosses, your colleagues, and think of a situation where you'd like to use the cause and effect pattern, and then write out 10 examples of of those in that context. Now remember, as soon as you've got a context and a goal for writing the language pattern, it becomes a lot easier than just sitting there going, "Oh, I'm going to write some language patterns." So put it into a context, have a goal, and then if you want me to check them, I've made you an offer. Send them over to me. I'll have a look through them and see if there's any way we can improve those for you. And then hopefully you go out and use them. So fabulous. Thank you for joining me on this webinar. It's always a pleasure. And have a fabulous, have an outrageous, and maybe a dexterous and a little bit daft week. And until next week, and next week we're going to be on Wednesday. And what you'll see me there is, rather than being in my studio with all the lights and fancy stuff, next week I'm going to be sitting in a hotel room. As again, I hit the road again, and I'm going to be on the road for a few weeks now. So coming live from you from a hotel room. Uh, so Jim says, manipulation. How dare you? Going to turn your because back around on you. Haha. You'll give me a bursary for the business practitioner course because you have faith in my ability to learn a lot from it. Jim, how can I deny you? So look at the offer and we'll come up with a way around that. Stephen, it might be worth mentioning that next week's session will be at 8 p.m. on Wednesday, not Thursday. Yes, on Wednesday, live from a hotel room. We'll get together and we'll get down to some of the nitty-gritty stuff of language patterns. I'd really like to thank everybody that's contributed to the session and everybody that's listened in, and it makes a real difference. Go and use it. You're guaranteed succeed. You will indeed. 98.75% guaranteed. And you know what? Any day you can quote Dr. Seuss, and there is brownie points for anybody know which Dr. Seuss book that quote comes from, is a good day in my books. Have a fabulous evening, and I'll see you soon, guys. Thank you ever so much. Take care. Okay, all right. Okay, I'm going to turn it off now. Bye, guys. Thank you ever so much.